Waiko White up everyone, Tamara Chiansquax. Stoachum Hait Umnut the Stakwan, the Kamloops Twin. My name is Tamara Archie. I come from Kinner Creek, Dog Creek community of the Secwepemc Nation. I live and work in Kamloops, and recently, this past summer, right at the beginning of June, there was a discovery of 215 plus children buried at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, which was one of the largest Indian residential schools run in Canada. And for me, it's kind of that that reminder of the effects of colonialism. And again, it all comes down to that wanting to possess and take ownership over our lands. And in British Columbia, 90% of the province is unceded. The rest of Canada, they have treaties, and Treaty 8 kind of covers the top corner there of British Columbia. But as far as Secwepemc Ulu, which is the Secwepemc Nation's territory, we've never ceded our rights and our title. And and it was such a worldwide or international news, but for us as Indigenous people of Canada and pretty much all of Turtle Island, we all knew of the stories that came out of these schools. I recall talking with my mother and her when we started our healing journey and addressing the traumas that came from, as a result of being in those schools. Myself, I'm the first generation in my family not to attend, but on both sides, my mother and my father, going back 3 generations, were all put into those schools. And for me, when I look back on when they announced that, I had no words. I cried, and I still go through waves of that process, because I think about, the words of my mother and how she would say, who would we tell? Who would even believe the stories? And in Canada, it was by law that you send your kids from age 5 to 18, and they would live out their lives in these places, which were overrun with physical and sexual abuse, attracting predators and just no care, no love, a lot of malnutrition. And I think about, that impact that it has on Indigenous peoples, and but at the same time, I'm very hopeful, because in order to really have true healing and move forward as a country, there has to be this truth. And they talk about truth and reconciliation. They've talked about it for many years, but there was no real application coming from the Canadian government. And now, with the announcement of the discovery of these children, that started off the search of many of the schools in Canada. There's approximately 196 different residential schools that were run throughout Canada, and and we're, I'd say, approximately 50, yeah, about 50 of these Indian residential schools have been searched, and now the number that they've um, now the number of the children has gone up from 215 to about 7,300 found children, and so we expect the numbers to be a lot higher. They have begun the search of the grounds where my mother attended, St. Joseph's, and I just think for the non-Indigenous populations of Canada, this is a truth that has never been taught in any of the schools, and they're all shocked by it. Yet, every Indigenous person I know knew or knows of stories. And like I said, the RCMP were there to enforce the law. They would go out into the communities and load the kids into cattle trucks and ship them off to these schools. And the Canadian law held right up until the early 70s. And then it started to change. But there were so many laws that are put in place by the Canadian government, and they consider us wards of the government. So it would be like if all Indigenous peoples of Canada were put into social care. And that's how they treat us. And so there's a big push over the last, well, I would say since Canada has become a country, really, to do away with the Indian Act. Our rights and our title are recognized under the Constitution, but then there were all these other laws and the Indian Act that was put into play. And these residential schools were the answer to the Indian problem. They figured if they could assimilate us and take away our culture and our languages, that it would answer the land question, that we would want to be Canadian citizens and become of the European mindset, where it's devour everything and all the resources. But I'm seeing, and I really feel very positive, that there are a lot of us now who spend a lot of time healing. And when you were talking about, it coming from the inside out, it's definitely, been the process for me and my family. I have 3 brothers, a sister, and my parents. And then 3 of my siblings have their children, and I can really see when I look back, my mother having gone in there when she was 6. I look back and reflect on my life as her daughter, and there's this place where I can see how everything was really good up until I was 6. And then after that, she changed. And I believe that's just a reflection of when she went into those schools. That's when the discipline and the lack of nurturing and love. So when you're raised in a situation like that, where they don't love you, they only speak at you in anger, and they only their only I guess it seemed like the only purpose for them was to make sure to demonize us in our own eyes. And so I look back and in in my life experience, it then became very violent in our home. And my mother was always angry, like very angry, and anything could set her off. And mostly it was because in those schools they had to be very clean, and everything had to be a certain way, very organized. And so if we didn't behave in that way, she would get very angry. And there was a moment, and this was about 1995. She had done all of these things to try and get to a place of peace within herself. And so I remember her telling me when she came out of the school that she figured, okay, if I become a really devout Catholic, then I won't feel this way. And so I remember that part of my life as well, where we were, saying the rosary every night, and that going on for quite a few years. And then she was like, okay, well, that's not working. Let's do something else. And so then she just kind of completely moved away from that. But there's like these little glimmers that I see from myself where we were still connected to our land. And I think about that relationship because as kids, they would every weekend load us up into the truck, and we would drive to lakes and mountains, and we'd make this big circle throughout our territory. And then I also remember my dad hunting and trapping. And I remember doing a lot of fishing with my mother. And so when I look at, where we're at today, and all of those things she wanted kind of came to a pinpoint in 1995, where my dad was a workaholic. So basically he would get up, eat, go to work, come home, eat, and go to bed. And that was the cycle for him. And my mom passed him in the hallway one night. And in that passing, it was all the lights were off. We were teenagers then, so none of us kids were home. And she just remembers saying, as like this silent prayer in her head, that there has to be more to life than just this existence. And she left the house, and then the next day she got a phone call from one of my cousins, and they said, we're going this weekend to a healing program. Everything will be paid for. Do you want to go? Because we have had a couple of people drop out. So there's space for 2 more people to go. And my mom said, yeah, sure. And that was the beginning of this healing journey for my family. So my mom and my sister went. And I had gone on a trip into the province of Alberta. It was probably about 18, 20 hours away. And I remember after the weekend, it was in the winter, so I phoned because the roads can be pretty treacherous. So I was like, hey, I'm in this town. And then just kind of quickly, just kind of casually, hey, well, how was that workshop? And my sister was like, oh my God, it was so amazing. She was like, however, like, I now, it's triggered all of these memories of sexual abuse. And as soon as she said that, it was like, boom, all of my memories of the sexual abuse that I suffered came back. And I was like, whoa, And I'm kind of like one of those really stubborn, slow learners. So I think it was another 3 years before I actually went and took part in the workshop, um, because I was very, very angry. Um, I blamed all of my experience on God. Um, but there was a thing that was happening with my family. Every time they would go, they would come back, and there would be something different, lighter. And then I started to notice there was a change in the way they were relating to each other. And so after watching 3 years of them going and coming back, I decided to go, and it changed our lives as a family. Um, and it was definitely that inside out work where, we had the opportunity where we were walked through the way our minds work and how you attach to these belief systems out of your experience. And if they're really negative and full of a lot of pain, then that's kind of the state you walk in and what you believe the world is going to be about. But then it was just like wading through all of those emotions and finding, the true source of spirit, and who we are. We really started to rebuild that relationship with each other. And I always remember my mother not being able to hug us. I remember, like, if we got hurt, it was always like, "What the hell are you crying for? Come here. I'll really give you something to cry about." So I don't ever remember her really holding us. But as we rebuilt that relationship and that bonding, she started to really share, like I said, those stories. And she remembers, like, because a lot of the abuse, the girls in the school, in the residential schools, would become pregnant. And she remembers them burning them in the furnaces there. And then there were also those who would run away, and would get beaten pretty bad. And sometimes, it would end in their death. And she recalls being told by older students in the schools, like, over in that valley over there, there are kids buried, and there were a lot of places that the priests and nuns would tell them that they weren't allowed to go. And so my mom figures that that's where, some of the other missing children went. And in that time, they also were basically child labor. So they would work for a lot of the ranches in the area. And there's one particular ranch where my mom was saying, like, kids would go to work there and never come back. And they would just be told that they ran away. But my mom said, the feeling she has is that, something happened and they're buried on one of those ranches. So it's like this painful process that we have to go through. And the work that I do now, I really wanted to be that bridge between the residential school survivors like my mom, and bridge that with my nieces and nephews who don't quite understand some of the behavioral things or the feelings that that we have, because I do still recognize the anger that comes from this history. But I don't even really want to call it history, because there's still a lot of work that needs to happen in terms of healing and that self-reflection. And but I also want to share that kind of story of hope, because I look at my family now, and we have all done that internal work, and it's by challenging each other as well, in terms of where we have disagreements, and really rebuilding that relation, the way we relate to each other. Um, and so that is going to expand out from self. How do I relate to my brothers and my sisters? How do I relate to my parents? And then I also think about, how do I walk in this world? um, who am I going to be? What do I want to share? And so for me, it's really that piece of sharing our story as a family, so that there is a hope, you know, that people can see, yes, we come from generations of trauma. But when we remember our connection, we're also connected to our ancestry and all of their teachings. And so we're slowly finding our way back. And I was sharing with Chris the other night, just how proud I am of my siblings. My older brother, he's now like a spiritual leader within our nation. He's gone to our elders and learned our songs and learned a lot of our ceremonial practices. And then there's my sister, who spent 15 years working with social development, children in care, and wants to become that advocate so that our people know their rights, especially when it comes to children. Because now here in Canada, the residential schools were replaced by the social service system, where if you're Indigenous, there's a pretty good possibility that if you go in to have your baby can be taken away just because you're Indigenous. And a lot of the times, the way the system's set up is, they'll pay thousands of dollars to support non-Indigenous families to foster Indigenous children, but they won't put that money towards supporting and helping, the parents heal. And then there's my other brother, who works with high-risk Indigenous youth. And then the youngest of our family, he's just has this brilliant mind around economics and food sustainability, that he really wants to put in place, businesses and a system that's going to support our nation, and through partnerships with all Indigenous nations, really. He's not just thinking Sohuetmuch, but he's also with our northern brothers and sisters in the Yukon and in the territories, Northwest Territories. They're paying obscene amounts of money for just your basic needs, a bag of flour up there is around $100, just for a 20-pound bag of flour. And So he's really thinking like on that bigger scale, how do we support each other and really move forward as nations? Um, and I just think, there's um, so much we can do to foster that kind of leadership. Um, and so the organization that I work for, um, we're in negotiations with the province of British Columbia, because they have written into their legislation, and taken on the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights. And so, this is our opportunity to put our laws into place. And they're all the documents that we're writing are based on our language, our tellings, our stepdach. And it's just really empowering to look around the table and see that, our organization is led by 90% of Indigenous women, who've all, gone and gone to university, and just seeing how we support that next generation of leadership through our intern program, which started out 3 years ago. And we had 3 interns, and those 3 interns have stayed on with the organization and now lead each of the tables. So one leads the forestry negotiations. The second one, she was called to the bar and is now our legal counsel and our policy analyst. And then the third one has stayed on and now works for us regarding wildlife and wildlife regulations in our organization. And then the following year, we've had 2 of them stay on. So one is communications, has her degree in communications. So she works in communications as well as she oversees our interns during the summer. And then the third one, he is going to be leading the youth contingent that we're hoping to add on this year. So there's like it's a multi-level internship program. We want to expand it. Right now, we've started with university level students. This coming year, we're hoping to add high school level, but then it's going to work its all the way down to elementary school. And each of the interns has a project that they need to do or complete during the summer, and those projects go to support our negotiations. We've had one done on old forest growth with projections into the future, how that's going to affect our territories, our medicines. We've had one done on the wild salmon. We've got 4 major rivers that run within Hoʻoponopono. And so the effects to, or the pollution in the water, what do our salmon stocks look like now? And same thing, projection into the future. What does that mean for us? And then we've had, with the 215 plus, this past summer, we had one of our interns. She has done 215 plus days for the children. So each day there's a different card on residential schools and information sharing that way. And so it's broken down and color coded in all different ways. So you can either go in there and look up everything that you would need to teach young children about residential schools, the kind of wording that you would use. There's also, very specific to the Secwepemc Nation authors, movies. Yeah, and so it's incredible what, this next generation of leadership, and we want to really share with them the things that we wish we had known. And what it's like to walk in these two worlds, being grounded in our Indigenous culture and language, but then also being out there in the universities and non-Indigenous corporations or organizations. What does that mean, and how giving them that opportunity to look into what it would look like if they use their education and came back into community, either working for their nation or ours. We're not just looking for Sequem. We've had students from Red Pheasant Cree Nation, the Gitxsan, Gittimax in the northern part of our province. This year we've had a non-Indigenous young lady who joined us, and it's about that bridging, and really the thinking behind that is like, we've been stewards of our lands for thousands of years, and now we're in a time and place where we've had a huge population of non-Indigenous peoples being born onto our lands, and it is our responsibility to ensure that if you're born onto our lands, you need to know the laws of our lands. And so through that partnership of walking on two legs and including non-Indigenous into our intern program, we're the ones who are teaching them, this is what it means to be an ally. This is what it means to be a good steward of our territory. And so I just think it's such a great thing that I want to share, and we've talked about it in our organization, where we've said, we want to make it a program that can be duplicated in any Indigenous community, and hopefully saving some steps in there, really kind of laying it out so that we can help other Indigenous communities do the same thing, and really just uphold and stand each other up in our nations, and I think as well we're expanding it, and we're hoping, what our hope is, or our goal is to really get the true history of our nation into the schools. So the two students that are going for their Bachelor of Education at the university in our city, they're actually developing curricula. Right now, they have, over this past summer, developed a curriculum for provincial ministries. So they'll have a professional development day where we'll go in and teach them about our culture, because a lot of the times what stalls out a lot of the good work that we're trying to do is the people that work in ministries, the non-Indigenous people. They like to waste time and say that they don't understand our governing systems. They don't understand our territory or our stewardship or what we're trying to do. And really it's coming down to, over this past summer with the wildfires that were happening in BC, it's coming down to Indigenous knowledge. That's going to start changing the way things are, and we're really pushing for that. And we saw that really come to light with the wildfires, because what was happening was BC Fire Service would come in and say, you guys need to leave, you have to evacuate the area. And more and more Indigenous communities are saying no, because when we leave, they don't really do a whole lot to save our communities. They do the bare minimum. And so, the leadership is really saying and standing their ground and being like, no, we're staying here because we know our lands. We know the way fire moves. We know, the winds that travel through our valleys. We know our waters, and not only that, like again, comes back to relationship. We relate to our land. We walk our lands. And so, that's what it's coming down to. And I feel like we do have a lot of people in the ministries that are starting to hear us. And I think, that part is that movement around that truth, the true history of Canada, the true history of Sukwamgulu. And I just believe, like, the more and more we support each other and stand each other up, and build those partnerships and share best practices and what we've learned, the further we're going to advance our knowledge and our stewardship over our lands. And that's how I think, we're going to create that change, to address climate change. Because there's no way you can ignore it if you have a relationship to the land and to the water, and I just feel really passionate about sharing that, and it's not about making non-Indigenous people feel sorry for us or feel guilty about the history. It's about the truth. This is the truth. And if you deny it, there's no way you can move forward in a good way. And especially for Indigenous people, when this broke and we were talking to our interns, I was telling them, like, this is a part of our bloodline. Like, there's no way, like, after all of the headlines go away, this is still a part of that intergenerational trauma. And this is where we need to start standing up and ensuring that we're not continuing that cycle. We need to address what's going on the inside. And each person has to decide who they want to be, how do they want to be. Yeah, it's just, that's all.
Yo, mahalo nui Tamara. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing that with us. You're reminding us that, as we suggested in our opening conversation, this is all an inside job. And Papaho'onoa, Mother Earth, is giving us all an opportunity to go to our rooms, go inside. Yeah. As the externalities around us, what we see, feel, touch, and experience, as sensual beings, in many ways helping us to reconnect to that spiritual stuff, that who we really are. A powerful telling and a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. For many of us, we can relate. Similar, but not same, but similar. The trauma, the pain that is in all of us, that we come, and maybe perhaps these experiences that we're seeing in the world today is a reflection of that as well. Many of us would believe that to be the case. And so, Chris, mahalo for the opportunity to come together this morning to look at these underlying issues and concerns that contribute to what we are experiencing collectively as a community, as the Indigenous people of island Earth. And so tomorrow, I'd like to say that, we here in Hawaii, again, similar, not same, but maybe as insidious. And our cousins in Australia, the Aboriginal communities that have suffered and continue to suffer the impacts of these kinds of practices, where others would come to literally breed the native out of us. So I can say, as a product of the private schools here in Hawaii, they were set up for Native Hawaiians. And much to the chagrin of many of my colleagues who had come from the school, I would say that maybe we too perhaps not as significantly as you and your ohana, your people. But in our case, they didn't have to come and get us. They had created a condition that we actually competed to be among them. They created a situation where we competed to be brought into the space. And from a colonizer's point of view, the best way to prevent an uprising is to have the leaders of the potential uprising to become your leaders. If you think about it as a strategy, forget the names, just think about it as a strategy. The experience that we had here, and that I am a product of that experience, is similar but not same to your own tomorrow. And that the school system that I attended and became a product of, unlike your own, where they came and actually took you, they created a condition where we actually volunteered and competed to be in the system. The insidiousness of that is that it's a system that helped leaders and chiefs, would-be chiefs that would lead rebellions in the future, to self-identify, essentially cutting the head off the rebellious snake. And so by heritage and or skill set, mana, the would-be leaders became chiefs of the systems that are in place today that continue to impose these different practices. Fire chiefs, police chiefs, admirals, generals of the various militaries that continue to control these spaces. But had it not been for the continuation of these underlying practices, such as Ho'oponopono, which we talk about today, the idea of making right and of forgiveness, and allowing ourselves to release these great traumas and these pains, so that, as you've said, we can begin to move forward, not to diminish what has occurred, but allow ourselves to reconnect and become whole, and not to continue living in a hole. And so the practice of Ho'oponopono is to make pono, and in our language, pono is to be integrated, is to have integrity, to be whole, to be one with self, others around you, and the universe, spirituality, which is different from just being in peace and balance, but it speaks to harmony. Many of us operate in peace today because we don't have someone attacking me at the door. And yet there is no peace of mind. Many of us may be able to balance a checkbook, but there is no resiliency. There is no harmony. And many of these things go back to these underlying conditions. But how do we get past that? More importantly, how do we create a condition or find a space where we don't bring the elephant in the room every time we have the conversation? That requires us then to spend the rest of the time trying to push the elephant out. Part of it is acknowledging the elephant is there and will continue to be there. And how do we make the room bigger, right? And allow the elephant to find a place that it is comfortable. I'm not sure any of us want to kill the elephant any more than we want the elephant to kill us. So yes, it is an inside job. What we see around us, the symptoms of those deeper causes, as you've clearly shown to us today, those internal memories, for we are all memory. It would be so much easier if I didn't remember sometimes. But if that's the case, how then do I diffuse and perhaps release those memories? And it's through divinity's support, to the support of our ancestors. And with is our deep intention to forgive, one, most importantly, ourselves. In the philosophy of our people, we say, sometimes we suffer the sins of our fathers. In the continuum of time, I could easily be the great-grandson of my great-grandfather 15 times removed, suffering from the consequences of my own behaviors. In the continuum of spirituality, I now have an opportunity to make right with myself and all of those that I may have injured, including my future descendants. It is in this moment, moment by moment, that past and present combine and contribute to the next moment, which is our future. In Ho'oponopono, it is about that continuum. For as we speak now, so we listen and we project. Yeah. So it is in this process of Ho'oponopono, I'm hoping that we can help to bring this event, this one moment in time, where we're trying to make things right for island Earth and all of its inhabitants. Yeah. But never to forget that perhaps as mankind, we have not been so kind to one another. Yeah. So in the spirit of aloha and ho'oponopono, please allow me to say these things. Yeah. E holokono no ke kino ame ka ohane. I maalama pono ka manao ki ola ke kino e ka manawa apa aloha. Aloha, aloha, aloha. In those words, it asks us to unify mind, body, and spirit, to become one with divinity, with all things, to be in oneness, to be connected again. For we are suffering these disconnections, the displacements, the disorders and diseases of those of our own practices as well as those of others. Yeah. Fear, anger, anxiety, all of those things. So in the spirit of Ho'oponopono and aloha, please forgive me and my ancestors for anything that we have done in word, deed, action, or inaction that has contributed to or created and continues to complicate or to stimulate these diseases, disorders, and disconnects, the pain, the discomforts, and these traumas. Whether they're intentional or not, our contributions to those, please forgive us. Yeah. May your ancestors and descendants forgive us. In this same spirit of aloha and ho'oponopono, my ancestors and I forgive you and your ancestors for all of the things that have done and have led to the perpetration of dis-ease and harm, discomfort, disorder, trauma and pain, anxiety, fear, obstacles and barriers to our continued peace and wholeness that has contributed to the harm to our planet, our island Earth, to the air, the water, the land, the sea, the sky, you and me. In the spirit of aloha and ho'oponopono, we forgive you. It is in this mutual forgiveness and asking for forgiveness that we can come now into this moment to ask for blessings, ask for cleansing. Before we can be blessed with better things, we don't want to bless the mess. It's a release, a let go. Yeah. So Chris, if it's okay, I'll just run through a quick cleansing guided by the mana'o, the ike, and the teaching of Antimona Nalamaku Simeona. Yeah. The Ho'oponopono that many have now kind of taken out of context. It is not a mantra, it is a process. Yeah. It is about releasing, transmuting, shifting the memories and things inside each and every one of us. But more importantly, it's still in the aina, the land, that is still in the air, the ha, it is still in the water, the vai, that affects all of our relationships, the e. Yeah. It's when we can release those memories, really replace them with aspirations of peace, harmony, and balance, that we create a new space, create a new condition, and not just fix a bad one. And it is in this spirit that I offer these thoughts. For those that may have not heard of these words or concepts, I will share them in the language of the contemporary, the English language, which means that there's terms here that do not translate directly to the language of our kupuna, our ancestors. There are practices and processes such as breathing if you just listen and follow. But please trust in this process today. And our intention again is to release, to let go, and to find harmony. To address all of the things that I think you have mentioned, Tamara, and many of us have been experiencing and feeling, is this notion of disconnection, displacement, imposed harm by others, and our inability to respond in ways that are healthy. While there are cures, are there healing? Is there healing? Yeah. To think that you're adopted, to find that you're abducted. What do we do with that reality? What do we do with this awareness? Yeah. And so I'll take us through this, and I ask each of us in this listening is just to allow the deeper inner self to release, let go, and receive aloha, pono, and blessings from the divine mind, the one that connects us all. From the nalu, the ocean that we all swam in, the amniotic fluid of our mothers, the amniotic fluid of the planet. Yeah. So in this combined process of Ho'oponopono, which is a higher level that Auntie Morna was kind enough to give to us. So please bear with me, as some of the terms may be different, but I think our spirits will understand. Yeah? E pule kako. Let's bless. Let's ask for this guidance now. First, let us have an inner connection. Divine Creator, Mother, Child is one. Will you forgive me for all of my errors and thoughts, words, deeds, and actions that I've accumulated and subjected you to over time, eons of time? As your mother, I forgive you for all your errors, fears, resentments, insecurities, guilt, and frustrations. Come and hold my hand and reverently ask the Father, our Aumakua, our highest being, connection to divinity, to join us and hold our hands. And as a unit of two, please ask the Father to join us, to make our family a three, a unit of one. Let love flow from me to you and from us to the Father. Let the divine Creator embrace us in the circle of divine love. Aloha piha, to be filled with love. We ask for shields and protections upon our inner beings, our inner selves, our inner children, the 5-year-old and the 50-year-old, the 6-year-old and the 60-year-old. Divine Creator, please shield my onihipili, my inner child, in a soft, warm blue jumpsuit. Support that jumpsuit with security, with the colors of indigo to ward off negativity. Please surround my onihipili with indigo lined with ice blue and pink. Layer this 1,000,000 layers to provide security for my child. Please place 200,000,000, 100,000 pillar of the piece of eye around my onihipili. Let's bring comfort and energy to our onihipili. We call this the Ha breathing process, 7 rounds. 1 round is inhale for 7, hold for 7, exhale for 7, and hold for 7. The 7 counts is natural to yourself. Please begin. 7 rounds. With each breath, with each round, accumulate the ma and the na, the man, the internal, the external, the balance of in and out, right and left, up and down, in and out, feminine and masculine, in this balance of ha. I am the I. I come forth from the void into light. I am the breath that nurtures life. I am that emptiness, that hollowness beyond all consciousness. The I, the id, the all. I draw my bow of rainbows across the waters, the continuum of mind with matters. I am the incoming and outgoing of breath, the invisible, untouchable breeze, the undefinable atom of creation. I am the I. Puumayo mai ka puilukama lama lama. Wau ka ha ka mauli ola. Wau ka poho ke ka ili moaho au ni kia pau. Ka I ke kino iho na mea a pau. Ka ia wiku upi o anui noi moaho au no ka ia pau. Ka ho mau mau o mona ami na mea a pau. Wau ka ho me ka ha e huna ka makani nahi nahi. Ka hua huna o komulipo. Ua na ki hi. Let divine intelligence manifest good health in all of my respiratory, circulatory, excretory, and auric systems. Let all imbalances be transmuted and put into their right time and place to bring greater supply, abundance, health, and spiritual cleansing. Let all imbalances be transmuted to their right time. My involvement and peace of mind have no limitations. And it is done. Divine Creator, Father, Mother, Child is one. In this repentance prayer, we ask if I, and just insert your name here. If I, my family, relatives, and ancestors have offended you in thoughts, words, deeds, or actions, from the beginning of our creation to the present, please forgive us. Cleanse, purify, release, sever, and cut all the unwanted energies and vibrations we have created, accumulated, and or accepted from the beginning of our creation to the present. Please transmute all the negative, unwanted energies to pure light. We are set free, and it is done. Divine Creator, Mother, Child in one. If I, again insert your name, my family, relatives, and ancestors wish to do Ho'oponopono with all of those around us, everything that we brought to this table, and the things that still may be behind the curtain and seen and unseen. To the families, relatives, ancestors, the thoughts, words, deeds, and actions, from the beginning of our creation to the present, may they all be included. Humbly, 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 we ask you all for forgiveness for all of our errors, fears, resentments, guilt, anger, violence, offenses, blocks, and attachments, situations and circumstances we have created, accumulated, and accepted from the beginning of our creation to the present. Cleanse, purify, and transmute all these unwanted, negative, painful, and traumatic memories, blocks, and energies to pure light. Fill the spaces these unwanted energies occupied with divine light. If there are any earthbound spirits and or negative vibrations within, on, or around the premises, persons, objects, parties, or parties with whom we now do this process, and to whom we do it with, or the following persons, anyone in the universe who is permitted to go at this time are earthbound, we humbly ask forgiveness on their behalf, and ask that they be cleansed, purified, and released to the path of pure light. All of our brothers and sisters who we've touched today and have touched us, no longer will they be earthbound. We release them to the path of light as they release us. If my soul has wandered to the four corners of the universe, I command that it return to my body. If there are any entities around, above, or below me, I command that they leave, and I ask for their forgiveness if I have offended them. I ask that they be cleansed, purified, and released to the path of pure light. Let my soul be restored back to my body. I call upon Aumakua to help guide and protect. We are set free, and it is done. Release, cleanse, and transmute. We cut all aka cords, all connections from all involved in this case and cases, and mentally bathe ourselves from the top of our head to our toes with the following colors of indigo, emerald green, ice blue, and white, each 7 times. Let divine intelligence approve the release and transmutation of all these toxins and negative vibrations to pure light. Let it manifest harmony, love, wisdom, order, balance, perfect and right relationships, ideas, sources of wealth, sustenance, and energies. We humbly ask that we be surrounded with a gold band of light. We are set free and it is done. A closing prayer, the peace of I. Peace be with you, all my peace, the peace that is I, the peace that is I am, the peace that is now and forever and evermore. My peace I give to you. My peace I leave with you. Not the world's peace, but only my peace, the peace of I. O kamalohia no me oiku malohia paulo. Kamalohia o ki ia wau no kamalohia. Kamalohia no na wa paulo ki a wa amao maolo aku. Haawi aku wau iku malohia ia oi. Waihu aku wau iku malohia me oi. A ole a ka kamalohia valino. Kamalohia o ka i. Let's replenish the energy that we used in this release with another 7 rounds of ha. Inhale for 7 counts, hold for 7 counts, release for 7 counts, and hold for 7 counts. Repeat 7 times. We acknowledge the divine creator, our inner family, the father, the mother, and child, the divine forces of all the universes, the divine forces of the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms. We acknowledge the Unihipili, the rhythm, peace, freedom, and balance, the Lady of Freedom, the Unihipili of the United States, King Kamehameha Ekahi, the Unihipili of Hawaii, the Unihipili of each and every nation, the Unihipili of the world, universes, and cosmos. We'd also like to acknowledge in Mahalo, Morna Simeona, for the key that opens the door to this freedom and to this wholeness of Pono. May the I continually bless all involved in the Ho'oponopono process, in the process of making right, wherever we are, with whomever we are. We are set free and it is done. We are now in the divine creator's embrace. Amama ua noa, amama ua noa. Oli ika ha, oli ika wai, oli ika I. Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Pakea kalani. Papa kahunua. No kaluna kuluna. No kalalo kulalo. O kapono no ie. O la kakua mauloi. Alohe. 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 Mahalo nui. Mahalo piha. Aloha. 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 Thank you, Chris, Tamara, and all who have joined us this morning and afternoon and evening. Yeah. I hope in this time together that we, even just for this moment, have become connected, reconnected. Yeah. And that our energies of peace and harmony can be carried forth in all our actions, words, and deeds, and be felt and experienced by those whom we connect with, but most importantly with ourselves. Yo, any questions, thoughts, anything that may have come up during our brief exchange? Now is a good time to share. Makua, good to see you, brother. Any manao from you?
Wow. So blessed and so grateful. Thank you so much, Uncle Ramsey. Thank you very much.
Yo. Aole pilikia, yeah. He me iki. Oh, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So I'm really just appreciative, present with the wisdom you shared moving into this space. It's all an inside job. And I'm so grateful for that formula. There's something about the power of 7 grounded in the power of 3. And such a special formula for us to really connect with in this way. These are the fundamentals of our creation energetically. And so thank you for helping make conscious for us this method. And so a big mahalo to the ones who have presented that to you to share with us today. And thank you, Sister Tamara, for sharing your beautiful story and your sincere story. You know, certainly one that has a universal overtone for many of us now. And so it's important we are in a space like this to come together and hold space with each other and to practice the act of Ho'oponopono. As you said, it's not a mantra, but truly a process. And it's ongoing. You know, I feel like it's an excavation process in some ways of some of these deeply lodged misunderstandings that we can correct. So it's a beautiful thing. And I do feel, I'll just wrap up by saying I'm very grateful for an awareness that this is a collective process. It's not something we have to do alone. We are truly all one as opposed to alone. We might have our solitude and that's necessary, but truly we're never alone. And in this collective healing and this moment of revealing, I feel it's a beautiful thing to share and witness with you, each of you, because there's only one of us here. So I see you and I honor you. In Lakesh. Thank you.
Well said, brother. Thank you so much. You know, when every raindrop can remember that it all belongs to the ocean. At some point, can we remember they were all come from the same source? And even as we remove a single thimble from the ocean has not gotten any smaller. And all rivers eventually lead back to the ocean. So Christopher, I want to mahalo to the kupuna and elders of each of our peoples and each of our islands, our places, who have somehow maintained the wisdom, but more importantly, the aloha, over all these times, despite all of the heva, the huki, the tension and pain, and have managed to continue to find their way through. to remind us of our true identities, in our connectedness, in our oneness. And that it's an inheritance that we just need to accept and embrace, that we're all from the same mother. We all come from the same Nalu. That it is in this family, the reunification of this family, and to acknowledge that mother's coming home. Yeah. And how do we embrace mother? And how do we welcome grandmother? These are the opportunities for each of us, to look within ourselves, to see which walls and which barriers have we built, and how do we begin to make room for mother, our brothers and our sisters. This is Pono, the opportunity to be Pono, to be one, Lokahi, in the spirit of aloha. Akahai, to be kind. Lokahi, to work together in unification and unity. Olo olo, to be pleasant, to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Ha'a ha'a, to find humility and to acknowledge the brilliance of others as much as we acknowledge our own. Aho nui, to be patient but persistent. This is aloha. And may we confront ourselves and everyone else with this spirit of aloha always. And with the spirit of ingratitude, we call mahalo, to be connected in that breath called ha. Yeah. Mahalo piha to each of you for spending this time, and to put your mana'o, your ike, into the bowl so that we can release, let go, and make new. Aloha, aloha, aloha. Chris.
I feel like there are really no words for the gratitude that I feel, and for the privilege to take that sharing of yours into my heart and my mind and my soul. I feel like being here in Glasgow recently, it's been such a push, and I feel like you really brought me back into my heart. I feel like that I'm whole again, and I feel so much more ready to be present in the world, to be available for relationship, to be a better listener, to be someone who's harmless, someone who's, always available to everybody. And your words and your wisdom just inspire me so much. And it's such a blessing to know you, and to be able to learn from the wisdom that you've shared, which I think is something so important for the whole world right now. Just being here in Glasgow with all of these world leaders and different business interests, I think just the layers of wisdom that you've offered all of us are that those thousands of layers of color, of protection, of force field, of relationship. And you've just helped me release a great burden. And I think these burdens are energies, are stories that we all carry. and having this chance to release them, having this chance to be more myself and to be more present in this miracle that life is just a blessing. And thank you for sharing this with us and with the world. And I just feel so deeply privileged.
You're very welcome, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. And hopefully we can do it more often. As I suggested, we were hoping to do this regularly and just open it up and allow people to just join. And as you said, with very few words, but intention. Yeah. And not necessarily be intention when we do it. Yeah. Find intention. So if I may, and unless others have thoughts that they want to share, allow me to close with these concepts in mind. As Auntie Pelahi would say, you know, the seeds of thought are watered by the emotions of heart. And every time we express those thoughts and our words, we give life to them with the life-giving breath of Ha, which squeezes between our heart and our lungs, that escape from our teeth, the niho. And once they leave our mouths, we cannot take them back. Yeah. We've given life to those words, to those thoughts, to those behaviors. We've made manifest. So as she would say, guard our thoughts, guard our feelings, and watch our words. Yeah. I find it interesting that the Hawaiian term for eye is maka. The word for the temple, which next to it is maha. And the word for the mouth is waha. Maka waha, maka maha. Yeah. Maka maha, watch your thoughts. Maka waha, watch your words. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. They even languaged it so that we are conscious of that energy that is always within us. The seeds of thought are watered by the emotions of heart. Guide your thoughts. Guide your words. Right? May they be manifesting truth, honesty, and harmony through all time, moment by moment. To each and every one of you, mahalo for sharing and allowing me to cleanse with you and your ancestors, all of our ancestors, so that we wake up tomorrow at our next unification, brand new. We can start brand new. Yeah. So with that, I say, we hope till our next sharing of breath, mana'o and ike. Yeah. Until then, guard yours as well. Chris, mahalo. Tomorrow, aloha. On our call, Lindsay, Jackie. Eo, aloha nui, mahalo.